Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Reds Rundown Podcast. This is by two lifelong Reds fans and journalists. I'm Rob. He's Joe. And we appreciate you taking the time to join us today. And yeah, is that right? We're uploading on a Friday, Joe? We are uploading on a Friday. This is wild because during Thursday Night Football last night, Joe, I should say, briefly after the Brewers blew a 2-0 lead in the wildcard game, the Reds announced, drum roll, that Terry Francona would be the new Reds manager. And we have found out as of this morning that it was confirmed by everybody right away, basically. But Joe, he has signed for a 3-year deal with a club option for a 4th year. So not even him as, or his decision. It comes down to whether or not the Reds want to bring him back. And I've seen a lot of people talking about this, Joe. I have a lot of thoughts on it. You and I both agreed we needed to get on here and talk about it. Oh my goodness. Joe, just where are you at with this? This was your number one guy, I believe. And one that I will admit, I am shocked. I mean, it's been almost a little over 10 days maybe since they fired David Bell, somewhere around there. So the Reds, I think, were moving with a purpose to go get their guy. But I'll digress from there, Joe. We're not, despite what's being said below me here, we're not doing a question of the week right now, other than how excited, I guess, are you for Terry Francona? Let us know on Twitter or let us know down there in the comment section below. But Joe, lead me off here. Where are we going with this? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, we got my guy. I'm so excited right now. There's. I'll put out the negatives first, right? I'm more of give me the bad news first type of guy, so that I can look positively after that. So the bad news, it's a manager who's older. It is a manager who has had his health issues, and
Yep.
I hope he's okay. There's a lot of Cleveland fans who started to dislike him at the end of his tenure. I think some of it had to do with how things went with some of the young players that I've been told from other Cleveland fans. But a lot of it is, at least I think, is he had those health issues that pulled him in and out. It seems like if he's taking this job, that the health issues aren't as big of an issue anymore. He's getting those taken care of. So those are the negatives right now, right? Like that, there is some hey, Cleveland didn't end on a high note. He is going to be 66 next season, and there was some concerns about what he did with some of the young players. But here's the high note. The Reds haven't had a World Series winning manager in a long, long time. So I'm excited for that. Proven winner.
Yep.
And a guy I think really understands. I mentioned this on the last pod or 2 pods ago, Rob, that we talked about it. A guy who understands old baseball and just how things used to be because he played in it. He played under Pete Rose for the Reds. But also a guy who understands analytics because he was in Boston, and Boston was really big on the analytics thing, even though they had a big payroll. So I'm excited for that. I'm excited for, players manager. You can talk to some of those Red Sox guys, and he really had their backs. He kept the clubhouse loose. Tito's just really good about that. And I think the guy who the Red Sox won 2 World Series under him. The Indians, back when they were the Indians, now Guardians, they went to the World Series, came very close to winning that World Series, and that's another one where Cleveland had a huge drought of winning a World Series. So. We're on a 30-year drought of winning a playoff series. We're going to be on a 35-year drought from winning the World Series on a city that has so much baseball history. That even if this doesn't work, I like that they're actually trying something. They're not trying to hire from within, like we kind of feared they would. They're not trying to go hire someone who's on a budget, some budget manager, or someone who really hasn't proven anything. You got a guy who proven he can win, especially when he's healthy. And that's what I really want to see here is I want to see effort from the front office, from ownership to go get someone like that as a manager. And then I want to see that extend to the players, which I know we'll be talking about all offseason as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's going to be, I think, something we need to talk about, and you may need to remind me of, but I think that this is a signal towards the players that things are changing. How much? We don't know. Because what Francona has been able to do, especially when he was with the Indians/Guardians, was he was able to do a lot with a little, right? And so I think that fits the Reds model pretty much dead on. I'll be honest, the only reason that I never well, not that I never, that I didn't consider him right away was because I thought he was done. I really did. After 2 health scares, I figured, okay, it's probably not good for him. Like, he's not doing too hot. Um, I really just didn't think the Reds would go out and do this. But the Reds are sending a clear signal to fans and to the players that they know that their window has opened maybe even a year or two earlier than they anticipated, and they need to go take care of that now. It took the Indians 4 years to reach the World Series, Joe. But they had records of 92 and 70, 85 and 77, 80 and 81. I guess with him, they might have been 82 and 80. I guess he just didn't coach one game. And then 94 and 67. I believe that ended up being 95 and 67. And they went on to go 10 and 5 in the playoffs, where they were very dominant up until they got into the World Series against the Chicago Cubs. And I just think that the Reds moved quickly. And I think that it's a perfect fit. I think Ohio works well for him as much as everybody remembers him with the Red Sox. He actually spent more years with the Guardians/Indians in Cleveland than he ever did in Boston, which is wild to think about. Um, I just, I am elated. I'm elated because they are getting a proven winner. He has a almost 54% win rate over 23 years of coaching, right? And truthfully, it's being pulled down substantially by his first 4 years as a manager at 38 years old to 41 in Philadelphia, where that team was pretty meh. Other than that, he's basically got a 56 winning percentage in 19 years of coaching baseball. His last 19 years of coaching baseball. And so to me, not only are you getting a guy who's going to do well, I think, in the clubhouse, but you're getting a guy who is a proven winner, somebody who can go out and get things done. And I think it was Harold Reynolds I saw maybe on Baseball Tonight or not Baseball Tonight, MLB Network, who said specifically, either him or Greg Rosenthal, I think is the other one. One of them were basically like, this reminds them of the Bochy signings, the Dusty Baker signings, like a young team going and getting an experienced manager before they hit their stride. And I think the biggest point that I wanted to make, and the thing that makes me the most excited, is don't think he would come back unless if this team was actually in a good place to compete, right? I don't think he's wanting any, reclamation projects or anything. I think he wants to be at a winner because he is 66 years old. Joe, his contract takes him through age 70. More than likely, this is going to be his last team that he ever coaches for. And that is slightly a sombering thought, but it is the reality that we are living in right now with him. And I think that that is incredibly exciting. The fact that Terry Francona is honoring us, Joe, with his last coaching team of his career, most likely, I think is really freaking crazy. And, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, Dusty Baker coached until he was, in his mid-70s. So there's a world where if Terry Francona, I think, finds a lot of success, then maybe he'll stick around. Maybe he'll win 2 World Series with the Reds, right? That would be pretty awesome. But it is, I think, the most exciting signing that we could have asked for, Joe. And it's one that I think signals a lot of things. I'll let you talk about that or about my thoughts. Let me know what you're thinking. And then I do want to go into what this signifies, at least in my mind, for the rest of this offseason.
That probably is going to be the last team he manages, because if it goes well, he's going to want to stay, and if it doesn't, then he's probably not going to get another chance after this. Doing so well in the past, but this is definitely going to be probably his last stop. I think that he does understand that this is a place you can win. I would hope that during the interview process, he had talked to the front office and said, "Hey, we need to invest more to win. Like we have some good young pieces, but we have to do a couple things to help get the roster over the top." And I think that's something that when he took the job, he would have to have known, because if the roster is just going to be as it is, I don't think any manager can say, you could say, hey, this any manager can get this team to the playoffs, right? A manager can believe that he himself could do that. But like to compete against like the Dodgers and the Padres and the Yankees and all the teams that are spending all that money, maybe not. Like, crazy things happen. The Tigers are doing really well in the playoffs right now with a payroll that's 18.8 million total.
which
But
is wild.
I think he knows they're going to invest in this team because otherwise it's like, hey, I can make a team that hasn't made the playoffs make the playoffs, but why am I coming out of retirement for this?
Hmm.
Or I could like actually win a couple more World Series,
Yeah.
and I think that's what probably happened here. Is he got the confirmation that like, hey, we're going to go sign some people, we're going to go be competitive, and that's why I'm coming back for my last managerial stop in Cincinnati. I'm excited for it as well. I think again, I mentioned earlier, because I know we're going to talk about future implications, past implications. Probably the best manager the Reds have had since Sparky Anderson, who won the two World Series in the Big Red Machine. You could argue Lou Piniella. You could argue some of the old guys that came around, like
Hmm.
Jack McKeon was hired. That was a big name. Davey Johnson. But I think he's the best um, since Sparky Anderson, 75, 76. And that's just huge for the belief in the team. Jonathan India called out the front office and said they never really go out and get anyone. This isn't a player, so it doesn't really count, but this is signaling to your team you want to
Hmm.
win, getting someone like this.
Yeah, and it counts in a very different way. And yeah, I was looking at all-time Reds managers. If I had told you that David Bell was the fifth all-time in games coached for the Cincinnati Reds, I don't know that anybody would believe me. In terms of like winning percentage and stuff, obviously Sparky Anderson is up there. Dusty Baker's actually up there as well. But if he were to continue his even 54-ish% win percentage, he would be one of the all-time greatest Reds coaches, managers, right? It's pretty crazy to think about, but he has done, I think, a lot in his past, and I think he's going to hopefully bring that winning mentality. I've heard he is very much a everything that I think the Reds were looking for, which was a guy not only just the analytics and the clubhouse guy, but he can be the rah rah guy outside of even just the clubhouse dynamics. I'm talking about getting these guys pumped up. He is going to hold people accountable as well. A lot of people said that David Bell did it, but it never really felt like it, right? It never really felt like he was holding anybody accountable. I haven't watched enough of Terry Francona when he was with the Guardians slash Indians to know for sure, but it doesn't, I've not really heard him accused of being somebody who leaves somebody out too long, in terms of starting pitchers or pulls them too early or uses too much of the lefty righty stuff. We'll have to see that, play out and see if maybe something has changed his mind over the last year, even because he's taken this year, I'm sure, to learn, right? As much as anything. He has taken the time to kind of see what the landscape is. And we talked about there were a number of job openings. I'm sure there will be more here in the coming weeks as the playoffs continue on and finish up. But it seems like he decided of the four teams that had one available right now, this was the best one. And I'm a little surprised that they didn't end up going with a Skip Schumacher. I heard that they were also, or I should say, I saw that they were also looking at David Ross. So the top three guys I think that we thought were very seriously in consideration were by the Reds. And they pulled the trigger on the guy who's got the experience, who's going to, I think, drive these players to do new things and hopefully, push them to be better. I'm excited for the Monday conference, Joe, to press conference, excuse me, to see what his thoughts are on this team and how he's going to be involved. The other thing I'll say before we hop into the future stuff, older managers generally have a little bit more of a say with the roster, right? Or generally when you have a managerial change, like they're going to come in and they're going to, I think, shake things up and they're going to express what they want. And so I think he may have a little bit more sway than David Bell did with the front office, right? I think they are like, he's a very well respected man in the world of baseball. And I think that's going to carry some weight when it comes to their decision making. And we'll talk about it now. The offseason. This is a clear signal to me that they're doing stuff this offseason. Like, I saw people on Reddit who were like, well, they said they weren't going to really spend. Like, Crawl was like, we're going to not spend too much on free agents and all that jazz. That's fine. but they need to make moves. And I think that maybe he's going to help steer them in the right direction towards trades, or at a minimum, maybe they do make some more free agent moves than we were expecting. Maybe they are going to be a little bit more open if he says, hey, I know that this guy is good. We should try to give him a chance, right? Like, I know I can get the best out of this guy, right? There are a lot of things that this shows to me, and it shows that the Reds are also not willing to sit on their hands, that they're going to move and they're going to go get the people that they want. And dude, I know that we have had some criticisms of Nick Krall specifically, but this firing of David Bell early and making this move to me shows that maybe he's getting a little bit more leeway, and we're seeing a little bit more of the better side of Nick Krall that's not being held back. Maybe it's a little bit of hopium, but that is my hope, truly, with what this signifies in my mind.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to try to give Nick Kroll anything higher than a C for the job he's done over the last several years, you're crazy in my mind. But we don't know the limitations he's under.
Mm-hmm.
It's just very much you can only judge on what we know. This could be an opening up. It could be the ownership giving him more leeway. It could be him saying, hey, I'm going to do my job to the best of my ability, regardless of what the ownership thinks. And if they want to fire me, fire me. That could definitely be a thing. This is definitely a situation where Terry will have more say over the roster. I feel like they'll trust his judgment. But I do think it'll be more in unison too. I don't think they would hire someone they'd have big disagreements with from the start. After David Bell, they said there's philosophical differences, which means they got in some heated arguments over that stuff. That's what reading between the lines will tell you. So I think he has more say. And honestly, you hire a 66-year-old manager when it comes around to next year. He's gonna your window because you want to win. You're not gonna sit back and not make acquisitions. So the thing is, maybe we trade some prospects for some players who are ready to help us right now, and people won't like that. But given the situation we're in with the manager's age, and given how some of the young guys haven't really panned out, and sometimes there's positions that we're overloaded with in talent, and a lot of positions we're not overloaded with in talent in terms of level and also minor leagues prospects level. It could be something good to go help this out. You mentioned that we want to have a guy. I guess you mentioned hey, you want someone who holds people accountable, Rob. I'm the same way. That's my biggest problem with David Bell. It felt like Will Benson could run out there every day and do nothing, and he would just keep on throwing him in the lineup, which I appreciate. But it's really about balance between being a player's manager and having some accountability. And I think Terry Francona throughout his career has shown that balance of there are some times where he will believe in his guys and he will stick to his guns and let those guys go out there and do what they can do. And there's times where he has that accountability. So remember 2004 ALCS, Pedro gets beat up as a starter in one of the games. And then later in the series, things still hanging in the balance, but the Red Sox did have a decent lead in one of the games. He puts Pedro in there as a relief pitcher. This is after Pedro had said, after people had asked him why the Yankees have hit him. He's like, I guess they're just my daddy. And then so he goes into the game.
God, I forgot about that.
The Red Sox are in Yankee Stadium. Yankee Stadium goes nuts, saying, "Who's your daddy?" They're doing the chant. And he goes out and gets the outs there and helps the Red Sox, again, break this curse, beat the Yankees, go to the World Series. And it was something that a lot of people did criticize. It was not a smart decision to go put your starter in that situation. But he wanted, and he said this on the 30 for 30 podcast, he wanted Pedro to have that moment. He didn't want Pedro to feel bad. He wanted Pedro to go in and say, hey, I beat the Yankees. They're not my daddy, all that stuff. And then you also look at it from the other point of view. The Reds in 2019 traded for Trevor Bauer. We didn't know the off-the-field stuff at that point, so it was a pretty good trade. We thought we were getting a good deal. This is, people don't remember, he threw the ball over the fountain or into the fountain in Kansas City.
Yep.
Terry Francona was the manager. Terry Francona had enough, and he's the one who helps make that trade for Bauer to come to the Reds. So it's one of those things where some of the bigger moments of his managerial career, he has kind of shown that he can toe the line between those two things, and that's what has me so excited. Yes, there's, like I said before, there's definitely Boston Red Sox fans who didn't like the end of the tenure there. There's definitely Cleveland Guardians fans who didn't like the end of the tenure there. But those moments that I think really help shape a clubhouse, showing faith, but having that cut off at a certain point. If you act like Trevor Bauer did, throwing the ball into the fountains or do something that's not going to help the team, is just great to have. So those were the two stories that popped up in my mind immediately when the Reds hired him, because of what we kind of need moving forward. A guy who can understand the young players and to see where they're coming from, but say, hey, you're not performing well, or you do something stupid off the field, we might trade you. You might be on the bench, and I'm excited for that part too.
Yeah, we need that desperately. The only thing I'm going to be sad about is the fact that he's coming in after Votto is no longer a Red. I feel like the two of them together would have been quite the treat for Reds fans moving forward, at least from an entertainment perspective, if nothing else. But I'm excited to see what current Reds are going to feel about this. There's no way Jonathan India and Stevenson and I don't know, Hunter Green, whoever was, sad about the David Bell stuff, there's no way they can be sad about this. Like, and it's no slight on David Bell. He was a solid manager. Was he a good manager? Sometimes. Was he a bad manager? Sometimes. I don't know that he was ever great, though. And so the conversation stemming around, well, I can't believe the Reds disrespected him and all this other stuff that I saw on Twitter. Bro, who cares? When you go out and you sign somebody like Terry Francona, it doesn't matter. You could have let David Bell go 5 minutes before the end of the season just to make a point. I don't know, whatever you would have wanted to do. Any petty baloney, I'll use a nice word for it, would not have mattered when you go and you get a guy of this caliber. He's one of the great managers, probably at least of the last 30 years. Some I heard arguing, and maybe they were just too excited, one of the better managers of the last 50 plus years, which I think is a pretty bold claim, but you could make that argument. Breaking the curse in Boston, I think, was huge. Doing it twice in 5 years is insane. Breaking the curse in Cleveland. Can he break the curse in Cincinnati? I truly believe he might be able to. This team has talent. If they get a little bit of support and they have a manager who knows how to win and knows how to win over a clubhouse, like Terry Francona does, there's no reason why they can't do what the Astros and Dusty Baker did or what the Rangers and Bruce Bochy did, right? The difference, and I see people comparing this to when Dusty signed with the Reds. Yes, that was probably the best signing the Reds had done, since probably Lou Piniella had left, right? So over 20 years. The difference is Dusty hadn't won a World Series yet. He had won, and he had made it there, but he had always choked in the playoffs. What did the Reds do during Dusty's tenure? They choked in the playoffs, right? I'll never forget the 2-0 lead over the Giants. What Terry Francona brings is a winning, not just mentality, but an understanding of what it takes to get to that level and do it and accomplish it. And even the fact that they took that Cubs team, I think, to Game 7 is wild because that Cubs team was really freaking good. They were all young. They had all been playing together. Like, that was, I think, a huge accomplishment in and of itself. So I really love this signing, Joe. I think you and I could probably go on about it for a full 60-minute episode. I will spare you guys of that, but Joe, do you have any other thoughts on this that you want to discuss? And if not, then I'll sign us out and let you guys kind of know our future plans with this show.
Yeah, so just a couple things. Terry Francona is one of my favorite managers that has been around in my lifetime. I appreciated those Red Sox teams. Always a Reds fan through and through, but you get into the baseball stories.
Yep.
I've read a couple books about Terry Francona, and one of them I would recommend. Some Mr. Fun Fact or cool things at the end of the show thing guy is the book called Faithful. I think it's something that Reds fans can really get a lot out of this offseason because that is the story. It's by Stuart Onan and Stephen King, the horror writer who is a big Red Sox fan. And it's about the 2004 Boston Red Sox and just they write to each other and they write about every game. And it's just fun to follow along. And through reading those, like that book, and then I think the other one was just a biography, which mostly goes over his time during the Red Sox, not the Guardians. Just really appreciate what he has done. But yeah, I'll recommend that book. I'll give a good shout out to those guys for doing a good job on it. It's called Faithful. And I think Reds fans can really get some good news out of it maybe in the future of like, hey, don't give up the faith. That people really lost the faith in Boston, no matter how good the teams they had over the years were, and he brought it out of them. So I'm hoping, wishing, believing all I can that this is going to happen for the Reds. But yeah, if you're into reading, that's one to watch out for or one to read. And could get pique the interest of baseball fans in Cincinnati for next year.
Well, I appreciate the book recommendation. I know I will be taking a look at that one for sure. You and I have talked about it in the past too, so it's kind of surreal now to have him here. Like it really is it's kind of almost a monumental moment in Reds history for us. Like even if it doesn't work out, which I guess let's talk about that for 2 seconds. Even if it doesn't work out, it shows to me that the Reds are serious about winning in a time when it feels like they didn't care at all. And with the way that upper management, not Nick Kroll, has spoken over the years, where are you going to go? Right? Well, now people are going to watch. Like, we're making the first move of the entire offseason, Joe. The very first move. When was the last time the Cincinnati Reds ever did anything first? I really cannot emphasize enough how important it is that the Reds finally made a move, and they did it to such an extent. Now, we'll have to see. I'm very curious what they're going to end up paying him. I don't know if they got him at a discount, because he's a little worn down over time. I don't know if they have some clause in there for if he has his health issues. I know that's going to be, at that press conference, that's going to be one of the questions that are going to be asked. I will be very interested to see what his response is to that. I'm elated, Joe. I really am. I mean, I sent you the text last night and I was like, whoa, like I cannot freaking believe this. The Reds genuinely may have one of the better managers in baseball. This is an A+ home run, absolutely out of the park signing for them. I think the years on that speak well as well. The fact that he signed essentially a 4-year contract as long as things go well is pretty crazy. And I don't know, Joe. I'm thrilled, man. I can't stop. Like, well, I'll let you say one more thing, and then I've got to end this because otherwise I'm just gonna go on forever because I'm that excited.
Yeah, as we were talking, Anthony Castro Vince released a story about Terry getting the job, and it seems like his health is good. He's playing golf, he's babysitting his grandkids, all the surgeries are behind him. He was enjoying life, but sometimes you feel better and get that call on your back. But he had 3 takeaways about the Reds hiring. Number one is he thinks the Reds are serious about contending next year, and he referenced the fact that all the things that happened with the Reds this year. Some of the free agent signings didn't work out. I mean, both of the free agent signings didn't really work out, but
Mm-hmm.
Ellie emerged into an all-star, and brought up the fact that Indians won 94 games the year before Terry took over, and then the next year they made the playoffs, and that was the start of their rise. So if he can have a similar result, and I think he can because the team was 15-28 in 100 games, that's pretty impressive. So I'm excited for Reds baseball next year. I do think this means, as we talked about earlier, especially if someone else is saying it, not just us, because we can sometimes get in our own world, they're going to compete next year, then I think they're going to go out and try to get some players to help them compete next year.
And that means that this is a great time to like and subscribe and be a part of this community that Joe and I are going to be bringing to you guys. I don't know if we'll be doing necessarily weekly episodes. Joe and I haven't really decided on that yet. Even this episode was truly spur of the moment just because I really didn't think we were getting managerial news. I think I said on the last podcast, maybe 2 weeks, I think is what I was predicting, somewhere around there. I did not expect them to move this quickly. I mean, we just finished the first round of playoffs. So the Reds are moving, and there will be more news. We will have more to talk about. Be on the lookout because Joe and I will record for any major news. We still may come on and do some other stuff. We haven't decided. I guess I'll give a quick little thing here. We haven't decided if we're going to do a Pete Rose episode or not, but he did pass away in the last week. I think to the surprise of many, I didn't know that I knew his health wasn't great, but I did not think that his health was that bad. So, we may be doing something with that as well. But we hope that you guys will follow us through the off season. We'll still be putting out some content. Make sure to subscribe to the Reds Rundown podcast. And it's gonna wrap it up for us on this one, guys. So with that, we will catch you on the next one.